Children's Hospital in Boston recently built up its case for expansion and for eliminating the outdoor refuge known as the Prouty Garden. A study on the expansion for state regulators found there would be little or no adverse effect on the cost of care, but defenders of the garden say the study also found there is no increase in need for that expansion that was based on local demand. Tonight we hear from two advocates with the Friends of the Prouty Garden, both parents of children who were patients at the hospital. Gus Murby and Karen D'Amato, thank you both very much for being with us. Thanks. I want to start with Gus. For people watching this show, there's this nice little park outside the hospital. I mean, what's the big deal?
You know, if I hadn't actually had occasion to spend time in Prouty Garden, I would be reading this story and I'd be thinking, this is just a garden. You know, it's just a bunch of people trying to save plants. That's not at all what this garden is. This is actually a national standard-setting healing garden. In a healing garden, particularly in a children's hospital where you have children who are facing serious illnesses, is a place of respite. It's a place of escape from the hospital. I think if you talk to a lot of teenagers who are patients in a hospital for an extended amount of time, they will tell you that the hospital is like a prison, and the garden is the place they can go to get out of that prison.
What about your experiences there?
Those track exactly with the experiences that we had. At the time that my son was in the hospital, the staff on the floor that he was on told us to go to Prouty Garden, and we probably ignored them for 2 weeks. We assumed it would be some sort of a concrete patio with a bunch of pots and some big plants and a couple places to sit. And when we finally, after about 2 weeks, went out to take a look at it, we were stunned. I personally was stunned because when you're facing difficult circumstances and you walk out to a place like that, the biggest impression that I had at first was somebody who came before me understood exactly how dire the circumstances are, how tough this is, and they had anticipated we'd be coming. And they put that garden in place for us, and it was an incredible help.
What about your child? How did your child react to this place?
I think he had a very similar reaction. He was a teenager at the time, so he wasn't quite that vocal about it, or he didn't put it that way, but I can tell you that he always wanted to go out there. One of the occasions I actually had to bring in some binoculars because there was a pair of hawks that had nested underneath the HVAC system on top of one of the buildings. So we were out bird watching from there even.
Karen, one of the things the hospital has said that even with the expansion, they're going to be creating more outdoor space, whether it's at ground level or higher up. So how does that strike you as a trade-off?
It doesn't serve the people the way Prouty Garden does. And you know, I just think about the children who are there for long periods of time, who look forward to going out into the garden, who actually have a relationship with particular trees, who get to see it during different seasons. And the roof garden and the indoor gardens are not the same. They're green space, that's true, but they're not a healing garden. Healing gardens need to be on the earth and in nature. And just to follow up on what Gus said about his experience with the garden, I was a new mother at the time, and my daughter was in the NICU, and a nurse told me about the garden, and it gave me the opportunity to get in touch with my motherhood. I felt like it was kind of ripped from me because she was my first child. She was very sick. She had suffered a stroke. We didn't know how she was going to do. And it was just like this world had opened up to me. It's like, you know, you're in one setting which you need to be in because there's a dire situation, and on the other hand, they offered this wonderful sense of hope and community that isn't the same. It's not the same if you're, you know, in a corridor and there are potted plants and nice benches and people are walking by.
We're talking with Karen D'Amato and Gus Murby from the Friends of the Prouty Garden. Gus, the hospital says, if you don't allow them to expand, then you have all this wonderful care that a greater number of children just aren't going to be able to have. So why cut them off?
The hospital has made an attempt to make this as an either-or. Either you save the garden or you save little children. The hospital has had an approved institutional master plan since 2008 that they revised in 2010. They have numerous alternatives, although they've claimed that there's only a single feasible alternative. That on the surface is just ludicrous. If there's only one feasible alternative and Prouty Garden hadn't been there, would Children's have really just stopped all growth and said, this is it, we can't go any further? They actually have alternatives, and in fact there's a parking garage on the other side of Longwood Avenue that had been pre-approved before they bought that garage for a 12-story, I believe 12-story research building, which they quietly put on the market last summer because they decided that's not where they wanted to put research. There are alternatives, they just don't want to do them. Perhaps they would be more expensive.
Karen, based on what I've read about the analysis of the expansion, it looks as if this is not so much for people in Massachusetts needing the care as it is for people from around the world. And, you know, I feel that local partisan sort of ties, but on the other hand, why not export our high quality care to people from around the planet and create jobs here?
Well, it's a concern of mine. It really gets to the hospital's mission, and their mission is to be for the children and families in the greater Boston area. The addition and the work that they would be doing would build an 11-story building with single rooms. And many of the poor children in Massachusetts wouldn't be eligible to be in those rooms anymore because of insurance concerns. So Medicaid patients, for example, would have to go elsewhere. And Children's is, it's number one. It needs to be profitable, but can it do it in a way that takes its current patients into account and the people who have appreciated the kind of care that the doctors are willing to give to the patients, and also the use of Prouty Garden as part of the healing contract that they have with their patients and families.
Gus, how do you fear about how this affects the cost? I mean, the analysis seems to say that it's not going to make much difference.
Well, that's a good point. The analysis as it stands basically projects a slight decline in the number of Massachusetts patients. And this is without us interpreting the analysis. The analysis as stated says this will do no harm to Massachusetts patients. We expect that there will be no more patients from Massachusetts than what we already have, but somehow we're going to collect more patients from the region, we're going to collect more patients from the country, and we're going to collect more patients from the world. Let's leave the world aside for a minute here and just say, how does it make sense that the demographic trends and the medical trends in Massachusetts point to a reduction in teenage or pediatric patients? But within the region and across the country, despite the fact there's children's hospitals across the country, suddenly everybody's going to be coming here. There's going to be a growth. There's a flaw, we believe, in that strategic projection that if it doesn't hold up, is going to be difficult for the hospital to deal with.
I know there's more information about this, both from the hospital and from the Friends. You got a website that we should mention?
Yes, we do. It's www.saveprouty.org, SAVEPRUTY. If you go there, you can connect to everything.
All right, thank you both very much, Gus Murby and Karen D'Amato from the Friends of the Prouty Garden. We'll have more news in just a moment.